Hey, my name is Mark Spess, and this video is an update to our last video, which we released several years ago on how to make stop motion films. The last video is way out of date. The technology is really old. There's new software, there's a whole bunch of things out there right now. My background is from working in television commercial animation for several years, as well as reading books, like most people, going on the internet, and also making my own films. So I've been very fortunate, though, to have met a lot of people at an early age of, I guess I was like 18 or 19 when I met like John Ashley and Webster Colcord and Mike McKinney as well. Had to kind of give all those guys credit for what I learned in clay animation specifically. And this video is really just a way for me to share what I've learned from them. We're going to talk about, like I said, motion control, how to remove rigs from your frames. We're going to talk about the software. We're going to talk about 3D photography, which is a new, realm for stop motion ever since Coraline came out. So before I get started, I want to point out that stop motion animation is a really slow process. You need lots of patience and drive to complete films, longer than just a few minutes. And it's not uncommon for films to take many, many years just to create like a 5-minute film. And we're talking films where you build your own puppets. We're not using like toys and cereal boxes and stuff like that. We're really making puppets like the one behind me here, where it's clay and it's all sculpted, built completely from scratch. So those kind of films can take a long time. Also consider the cost. You're going to have to buy a camera. You're going to have to buy lights, extension cords. You're going to have to buy software. You're going to have to buy tools. You're going to have to buy equipment. You're going to have to buy supplies like wire armatures. Just as a basic example, you have to buy wire, epoxy, all kinds of stuff. So you got to really consider all that before you embark on stop motion as well. If you want to get first-hand knowledge on the problems faced with doing stop motion full-time, check out some books by Ray Harryhausen, and you'll get a lot more insight than I could give you myself just in this short DVD. Books are a great way to expand your knowledge about animation. One kind of book animators should strive to get are books explaining how to write a good story. That's because the whole point of animating is to tell a good story first, and then to express it through the art of stop motion second. The book called Developing Story Ideas by Michael Rabiger is a good book to start with, but really any book in this genre will be helpful. As I mentioned in the intro to this DVD, pretty much any book that Ray Harryhausen is the author of is going to be a great book for your collection. Most books he wrote explain various aspects of his dynamation process. Dynamation is the term for the way he utilized different techniques that he and his teacher Willis O'Brien invented. Stop motion has its own limitations, and Ray's books show how he overcame those with the technology he had at the time. For the most part, things have remained the same today, except much of the computer, camera, and fabrication technology has advanced. Edward Muybridge books are what VCR technology was to us growing up in the 1980s and 90s. Nowadays, with DVD players and YouTube, you really can't step through videos frame by frame as easily. This is where VCRs used to have the advantage. The Muybridge books detail how animals and humans move through space. In most of his books, animals and people are shown running, climbing, tumbling, hopping, dancing, and many dozens of other activities. Muybridge also placed grids behind the subjects showing how high the various body parts were at different points during the actions. His books are great to study and will help anyone understand how things really move. The Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams is another must-have book. Richard's book is a no-nonsense and direct-to-the-point book about how things move. In particular, Richard goes over walk cycles and the various ways different characters move the way they do. For example, women walk different than men, gay different than straight, fat versus skinny, cartoony versus realistic. So even though this book deals with hand-drawn diagrams, everything within it can be utilized for stop-motion puppet animation. Once you learn the basics of how things move, timing is the next logical step. Timing for Animation by Harold Whitaker and John Halas is a good book to solve that critical issue for animators. If you want to figure out how many frames it takes and how to space an object over time. This book shows through diagrams and its theories based on physics. Without timing, your animated puppets might zip around at the speed of light when you really want them to move as slow as a snail. Both authors break it all down in a very easy to understand way, and I highly recommend everybody get a copy before you start animating. The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston is what animators used to call the animator's Bible. The book details the history of Walt Disney's animators that were later dubbed the Nine Old Men. This group of dedicated animators didn't have anyone before them to ask questions and literally wrote the book on how animation works and looks best for audiences. Every animator who came after the Nine Old Men has followed the rules that they laid down, so The Illusion of Life is a great starting point when it comes to understanding the fundamentals of animation. A very fun and helpful aspect of this book are the little flipbook animations showing different principles in detail. This book is definitely a must-buy. As I mentioned in the book section before, story is the most important part of your film. You can have poorly made puppets and sets, but if the story is good, you can still hold the interest of your audience. If you're new to making stop-motion films, don't get caught up in trying to make a feature or even a 20-minute film. Start small because most people give up when they aim too high and then realize what is really involved in making these kinds of films. Roughing out your story, characters, and plot into a summary will be a good place to start. From here, designing your characters and locations is where it all begins. If you have a vision of where your characters live, drawing it on paper will give you a good reference when you draw your storyboards. It keeps things consistent. Drawing your puppets based on the story descriptions will help in these early stages too. The next step will be to figure out your aspect ratios. 4:3, which is 139 by 106 pixels at any scale, and 16:9, 184 by 106 pixels also at any scale, are the most common ratios of width to height. 4:3 is for old-style TV sets, and 16:9 is for widescreen. You can do this in Photoshop by first making a new document at either 139 by 106 pixels, which is 4:3, or 184 by 106 pixels, which is 16 by 9, and then sizing those images up as large or small as you need to draw inside of. Post-it notes can also be used and is a popular low-budget method of making quick storyboards. Roughly sketching out your scene at the top of the note with some dialogue and a scene number below is the bare minimum of what you would need. Stick them on your wall or on a piece of poster board, and editing is a snap. Just remove notes or add them in wherever you like. If you are good at drawing, you can make your paper template large for lots of detail. Again, Photoshop is a good place to make these, but you can draw out a template using an ink pen and a ruler. When you're done, you can make copies of these in a photocopier to save time. It makes it easier if you punch holes and keep these in a binder for easy arrangement. For more complicated productions, you can add notes, lighting ideas, dialogue, the action, length of shot, who's animating, the shot number, or whatever you need to keep things easy for your production to understand no matter which department they are in. Once you've got your storyboard system created, then it's time to start drawing. Make sure everything is simple and easy to understand visually. For example, don't put a flower behind your character where you can't see it if he's going to pick it up. The same goes for gestures. If a puppet is gesturing to another puppet and their arms are angled away from the camera, it won't be understood. Always give your puppets a clear and strong pose in your scene where the camera can see it, and you should be okay. Don't add anything that distracts from the main action of the characters, like dancing frogs outside of a window when the character inside is doing something important, like finding a key and putting it in his pocket. He might use the key later and the audience will wonder, where did he get that? Don't add camera moves, cut to new scenes, or add anything unnecessarily. Tell the story, make the point, and keep it simple. If it's an action shot that requires lots of cuts, make sure every shot you use is long enough to register with the audience. If it's too fast, your audience won't get what's happening. Scan or compile your individual drawings in an editing program, and you've now got an animatic. The animatic tests the flow of your scenes as well as the timing. Later, you can remove still images with the actual shot until you've replaced them all. You'll just have to splice in the recorded dialogue for your characters, which we'll cover in the next section. If you have the cash, Storyboard Pro is a dedicated software program for currently $899 here. But for that, you can get an editing program like Sony Vegas and a paint program to make your storyboards with. I'll leave it to you to decide what's best, as the program is marketed towards studios and experienced storyboard designers to streamline the process for them. Recording the voices for your characters is a very easy process. All you need is your computer, a microphone, and some audio recording software. Then you break your voices down in another program that splits it up into chunks or frames that represent the number of frames you record per second. You can choose between many different microphones, from simple microphones to very expensive studio-grade microphones. For the hobby home user, I recommend the Blue microphones. They come in many models, but the Yeti is one of the best for the price. It's just over $100 USD and can be bought on Amazon.com. I like this mic because it can record a large range of audio frequencies and plugs into a computer with a USB connection, so you don't need to spend hundreds of dollars on stands, cords, or any other hardware. If you plan on making your film with a very low budget, a simple computer microphone for a few dollars will work too. It just won't give you the same recording quality. No matter which mic you choose, you will need software to make your recordings. Audacity is a free program that will work just fine. For more advanced recording, editing, and sound modification options, SoundForge Audio Studio will get the job done too. For the producer or high-budget filmmaker, I highly recommend that you hire a voice actor, someone who has experience working in commercial, feature, or personal projects that you can hear. Voice actors really are actors and can add inflections and nuances that anyone just starting out won't understand. And most voice actors will be able to record their voices on their own personal equipment and simply email you the MP3 or WAV files. So don't hesitate to use Google and search for voice actors to help with your films. After you have your script recorded into sound files for each of your characters, it's time to break it down. Let's start with the most unique program. Dragon Stop Motion is a stop-motion capture program that has a built-in lip-sync program and is also effectively simple. You do not even need to use an exposure sheet. Simply set your frames per second to the desired number. Next, click on the Window tab to view your audio controls. Click the Load button to find your audio file and it will automatically convert it and show you a waveform. From here, you simply scroll back and forth or use your left and right arrow keys to listen to the corresponding sound. You can enter your word phrase in the box below it and also type in individual letters known as phonemes or the sounds of the letters that you hear.
You got mail, baby!
In this case, it is of a person saying, "You got mail." As you type, an exposure sheet is also being automatically filled in. From there, you can enter notes, the animator's name, the shot numbers, the director's suggestions, or whatever you like. Print it out and you are all set to animate old school style as well as new. As you animate frames, you simply slide your audio in the timeline where it needs to go when it's time for your puppet to speak. You can find Dragon for $275 USD at www.stopmotionstore.com. LipSync Pro is the latest incarnation of lip-sync programs that is compatible with almost any kind of audio file and even works on my Windows Vista 64-bit machine. It is robust and made by the same guys who made Stop Motion Pro, a very popular stop-motion capture program used by Aardman Animations, creators of Wallace and Gromit. To use this program, you first need to create a new project. Simply click File, then click New Project. From here, you browse for the audio file of your character speaking. Next, you choose a mouth set. The standard set can be found in your C, Program Files, LipSync Pro folder. If you have the time, you can make your own sets of mouths, but it's not really necessary. Just choose any mouth set you like from the list. Next, make sure to set your frames per second. Click OK and your project will now load. Once it loads up, the process is similar to Dragon. You can select chunks of audio in the waveform at the top and then listen to the sounds. On the right side of the screen, you would double-click the corresponding mouse shape that loaded from your mouth position file. You can also click on the shortcut keys associated with the description to speed up the process. One thing to point out is you can fill in every single line with the mouth position, or you can do this just at the beginning of where the sound starts. It is sometimes more efficient to add it only to the beginning, but it's a matter of choice. Once you've completed your new exposure sheet, you can print it and check off the frames as you go with the pen. Or, if you like, you can export it as an AVI file and import it into Stop Motion Pro for rotoscoping. We'll cover rotoscoping in a future part of this video, but in essence it works by viewing frame by frame your exported video and lining up the mouth positions as it changes in your Stop Motion Pro timeline. Again, you can find this software at stopmotionstore.com. You can buy it direct from the official website, but buying from our store supports creating more tutorials like these. The creators of Magpie Pro were one of the first to address the issues of breaking audio down for animators on computers. It is well known and many appreciate its robustness. It is updated often and allows you to import various audio files including MP3s, waves, and more. You can also utilize several frame rates and print out your full exposure sheets. Since I wasn't able to get Magpie Pro to work on my computer other than loading a sample project, there are two nice features that are worth noting with this program. You can load reference video footage of your voice actor to line up your mouth shapes with. The other thing worth noting is the automatic speech recognition engine. This engine allows phonemes or mouth shapes to load automatically for you. This may or may not work well depending on the audio file, but it is nice if you need to save time breaking down lots of audio files. It also allows for multiple actors speaking at once. The biggest drawback to this program is it costs $250 USD. You could buy Dragon Stop Motion, which includes most of the same basic abilities, for only $25 more. While trying out the newest version of Magpie Pro, my 64-bit Windows Vista operating system was not completely compatible, causing the program to lock up. According to the creator of this software, they don't expect many Vista users to buy Magpie Pro, and I guess I can agree with that myself. But it is something to keep in mind when you decide what program to invest in. My suggestion is to try the demo version before you pay and make sure everything works on your own personal computer. This program requires Windows 98, 2000, ME, XP, or Vista, and for Mac users you need at least Mac OS 10.4.3 or newer. You can buy this program at thirdwishsoftware.com. JLipSync is a free program that will break your audio down just as well as a paid program. Amazingly, it even works on my Vista 64 business machine and is one of the most intuitive programs you can find. It only opens 8-bit PCM WAV files for viewing, which means you may need to convert your audio files to play within it. Luckily, Audacity that we mentioned before will record 8-bit PCM files under the correct settings. The main drawback to this program is that it might not be upgraded in the future as operating systems advance. Another problem are the 8-bit PCM files that you need to convert audio files into. If your voice actor records MP3s, ask them to give you an 8-bit PCM WAV file in addition to your MP3s if they have that ability so that you can use JLipSync. Finally, you will also need to install a Java virtual machine, which is located as a link on their site. It is very similar to the original version of Magpie in layout and use. The only limitations are that you can only use 24, 25, and 30 frames per second as your frame rate. This means you can't animate in any other frame rates. Still, this is a free program and you get what you pay for. All you need to do is scrub back and forth through the frames and double-click the appropriate mouth position. Then save what you did and export it into a spreadsheet document by clicking File, Export to File, SEP, and then open it in any of your favorite programs such as OpenOffice. From there you will notice your X sheet and mouth positions, which can then be printed and used during your animation. There are many ways to animate the physical mouths on puppets. One simple way is to use sticker mouths that are created in a paint program and printed on label sheets. These can then be cut out with scissors or a sharp X-Acto knife and stuck on your puppet's face. Another way is to animate puppets utilizing paddles or wires on the armature under the face. Liquid latex or foam latex is injected in a mold over this, and you simply bend the mouth into the desired position. You can also use silicone for this as well. Another more modern way is to use 3D printed plastic mouths where the entire mouth is replaced and held onto the puppet with magnets. This is out of reach for the beginner filmmakers in most cases, but is simple and very fast for animators. Let's explore this new type of replacement mouth and how beginners can use a few free programs to create them. Sculptress is a free program made by the creators of ZBrush. In combination with the Wacom tablet or just your mouse, sculpting is actually very efficient. Sculpt one side of something and it is shaped on the other side, creating a symmetrical object. Here's Coraline, or at least my attempt at creating her face to show the idea. You want to hollow the back side and avoid undercuts. Once you create a neutral face, you can then alter and save it as a separate face for every replacement. We'll talk in more detail about that later as to how many shapes you actually need. After you have your replacement mouth set made in Sculptress, there is a website explaining how to import the shape into a second free 3D program called Blender. And from there, you export the shape into a file that the 3D printing companies can utilize for printing. To find the tutorial on Google, search for Preparing Your Sculptress Model for 3D Printing at shapeways.com. From there, you will find the PDF tutorial at wikiwidgets.com to download and follow. After that, shapeways.com can print your final 3D replacement faces. Once your faces arrive, press a face along with the eyes into a round piece of clay to create the negative shapes for the faces to latch onto. Carefully pull the face and eyes out and you will be left with hollow sections in the clay. Cast this clay shape in plastic resin with magnetic metal shavings mixed in, or insert any metal object in the clay as you did the eyes for you to insert later. This is what the magnets in the face will be attracted to. Drill holes and insert tiny round magnets into the faces, and then they will adhere to your plastic armature headpiece. Just pop a face on and then pop it off as you need. It should snap into exact alignment. The eyes can stay in place with a little sticky wax or by inserting magnets into the back of them to attract to the metal filings in your resin cast head armature. That is the most basic and inexpensive way to make replacement faces using the new 3D processes. You can elaborate on this process by making only replacement mouths with replacement upper eyebrows, nose, snarls, and expressions. If you want to experiment, we offer free downloadable replacement face files on our website thanks to Marshall Miller. Just do a Google search for 3D printable face objects for lip sync. From there you'll find it on our site. You can download them and upload them to shapeways.com and give it a try yourself. The last way is to use all clay mouths, sculpted for every frame or replaced. This is the hardest way to animate a mouth, but in my opinion is the nicest looking. When making your mouths, you can choose any of the methods I just talked about, but let's talk about the general rules while making replacement faces and mouths. Believe it or not, you only need at a minimum 9 different mouth shapes to pull off a good lip sync. From there, you can duplicate those mouths into mad, happy, neutral, or sad shapes if you desire when it comes to later making these mouth shapes for your puppets. It will of course depend on what you are trying to achieve. These individual mouth shapes are called phonemes, as I mentioned in the video before. The reason you only need a minimum of around 9 shapes is because certain mouth positions can cover several sounds. Take for example the F sound when you speak. Think about the shape your mouth makes. Now form the V sound, or V. Notice how F and V are the same? It is the same for B and M, T and S, and A and So here are the basic positions. You can see A and I are together, the E is by itself, the O plus U plus W and Q are all together, the C, D, G, and K all together, the th, or the TH sound, that's by itself, and R is by itself as well. The L plus S and Z and T go together, and the M, B, and P shape. Now those go together as well, and then there's also what is called the neutral or rest shape. So that's sort of used in between when you speak words. But not in all cases. Sometimes the neutral rest shape isn't actually there, but the last letter of a certain word is held until the next word is used. So that just depends on what your puppet is saying. But the neutral is just sort of a relaxed mouth shape. Here are some tips when animating your puppet dialogue. Before a puppet is about to speak, it takes a short time for the mouth muscles to completely form before a sound is made. So, when you animate mouths, keep in mind that you may need to position your puppet's mouth shape slightly before the actual sound is made. This will give you a much more realistic animation. The type of puppet you animate will dictate how you animate your voice actor's dialogue and bring your puppet to life. It is not just animating a mouth on a puppet. The entire puppet will accent the words as you go. For average human puppets, you animate them as you would animate a normal person. Arms are used to convey motion in the spoken words. Body posture and the tilt of the head all come into play. This becomes more difficult for exotic, alien, or cartoon characters, as not all of them have 2 arms, legs, and a human head on top. Animating puppets with small mouths, no mouths, or when they are far from the camera can cause problems. Take for example this penguin. If he speaks, he has a very tiny mouth and the audience may not see him talk. One way around that is to animate the whole body. Tilt it left and right. If your style allows, squash and stretch during the dialogue can help too. Accenting words with eyes closing and opening during high intensity parts of a word help too. Combine that with moving the small wings on the side and your audience will know he's speaking without any difficulty. Robots that don't have mouths but have speaking parts are another example of a problem. Adding mechanical parts or appendages that move or lights that light up when they speak are solutions to that problem.
Now who put that there? They must be crazy.
Where do you go to get your stop motion fix? For the latest scoop on everything going on in the world of stop motion animation, you go to the all-new AnimateClay.com. Get late-breaking news and inside info about all of the films being made, and it's where you can pick up everything you'll need for your own projects. Armatures, tutorials, books, videos, and more, all on AnimateClay.com. Bookmark AnimateClay.com today.
The Poor Man's Motion Control Camera is perfect for beginners. Your shots will look better if your camera moves and is animated smoothly on top of your tripod. All you need are 4 things: scrap paper, a red laser pointer, pen, and tape. The total cost is less than $9 US. First, you need to tape some paper off to the side of your camera. You can also use a dry erase board, poster board, or any other writing surface. In this case, we are going to do a simple pan shot where the camera stays level and pans to the side. Tape your laser pointer onto your tripod and give it a test to see if it is secure. At 24 frames per second, we're going to move the camera 6 times for a total of 1/4 of a second. Aim the camera onto your set at the beginning and end points of your shot and make tick marks on the paper. Then divide the space up evenly and add in your ease-ins and outs. Simply move the camera after each frame is captured, and it will appear to move when played back in your stop-motion software. Mount your laser facing backwards on your camera for more intricate moves. Instead of 2 points, we'll try 3 points this time. Aim your camera onto your set's 3 points where you want the camera to travel and make tick marks in each position. Join these points with a smoothly drawn curve, and the camera can now follow paths in the up, down, left, and right positions. Time your move and divide the lineup accordingly. For more stability, tie a rope around a heavy object and hang it from the bottom of your tripod to weigh it down. It's also best to have the tripod on a solid wood or concrete floor. Mount your laser with electrical tape, hot glue, or stronger fasteners to your tripod for more accuracy as well. The motion control track is a system of moving your camera along a track for animating the entire camera on your set. The advantage to this is that your audience will feel they are immersed in the scenes. For this project, we are working with O-scale hobby train parts. You will need O-scale train track that is curved and straight, a train car that is cheap and can be taken apart. We chose a Lionel New York City gondola, and we also have neodymium magnets. We found all these parts on eBay.com, but any hobby shop near you should be able to help in finding these for you. For the base we built that the camera sits on, we used a few pieces of scrap metal which had a hole in it. This allows us to bolt the camera to it securely with a 1/4 inch bolt that has 20 threads per inch. You can make the base out of wood if you don't have any scrap metal. Ours can twist on a simple metal post that it sits on. The train car was wobbly, so I wrapped some fine floral wire under the crescent-shaped washer to remove the play. This instantly made the area more snug. After noticing that the sheet metal of the train car was thin, I soldered a piece of square brass tubing to the bottom. It made it much more solid. You could use a piece of wood, metal, or other strong material and epoxy it in the same place if you aren't good with solder. Magnets were simply stuck on the bottom of the metal train car, which in turn pulled everything down towards the metal tracks. There is a very small gap between the magnets and the track itself, so the magnets don't get stuck when the car moves between connecting tracks. After this step, the entire train car became very solid. I can hardly get any wobble at all. Hot gluing some aluminum armature wire as pointers helps me to see how far along the whole thing moves between frames. Since they point to the railroad ties, you can move the rig 1 tie per move and test the results. Finally, I made another simple rig out of wood, a very long bolt, and a long threaded nut. I twist the bolt to push the entire train along. The more twists between capturing frames, the faster it will appear to move. Rotate the bolt just a couple of times per move, and it will appear slow. You'll find that using an equal amount of twists each time will give you a very steady move. Just don't forget to ease in and ease out at the beginning and ends of your moves. The long bolt can swivel since a flat piece of metal compresses the nut that secures it. All I used were screws that tighten onto the wood and pull a scrap metal part downward onto the nut. When the train car arrives at the curve, the bolt moves to the left or right depending on which way the car turns. If you don't have the same parts as seen here, find any items lying around that you can utilize. Sometimes imagination can go a long way.